Every time we pass this church, she says, this is where everything ended for me. I am an architect. I believe in the logic of structures, in the integrity of a well-planned design. My world is one of blueprints in physics, of foundations that can be trusted and walls that provide shelter. I respect the beauty of a place like St. Giles Cathedral, its Gothic arches, its flying buttresses, the sheer, defiant ambition of its stone spire. I respect it as a feat of engineering. But as for what happens inside it, the faith, the ceremony, the mystery, I have always kept a respectful, professional distance. I never imagined that the greatest mystery of that church, its most profound and heartbreaking story, was living in my own home. Inside, my 5-year-old daughter, got my husband Liam, is a musician. Where I see load-bearing walls, he hears acoustics. He loves the old cathedral for the way it can hold a single organ note for what seems like an eternity. Our daughter, Clara, was a perfect fusion of us, both a child with a logical mind and a song in her heart. Our life was a happy, well-designed structure. The first crack in that foundation appeared in the car. St. Giles sits on the main thoroughfare of our town. Passing it is unavoidable. The first few times, I didn't notice Clara's reaction, but then it became a pattern. Every time the great stone facade of the church came into view, a silence would fall over the back seat. The singing would stop, the chatter would cease. I'd glance in the rearview mirror and see my daughter's face transformed. The light would have gone out of her eyes, replaced by a somber, world-weary sadness dot, and as we passed directly in front of the massive, carved oak doors, she would whisper, her voice a strange mix of childish tone and adult finality. This is where it happened. This is where everything ended for me. The first time, I thought I misheard. The second, I was confused. By the 4th or 5th time, a cold, creeping dread began to take hold. What ended, sweetie? I'd ask, trying to sound casual. What happened at the church? Her answers were fragmented, nonsensical for a 5-year-old. The white dress was so heavy, she'd murmur, looking at her hands. So many people were waiting inside, all looking. It was so quiet when the music stopped. And once, with a chilling sigh, he never came. Liam, with his gentler, more romantic soul, thought it was a fantasy, a story she was weaving. Maybe she was a princess in a past life, he'd joke, trying to lighten the mood. But I am an architect. I know that for a structure to stand, every detail must be true and have a source. There was no source for this. This was a design flaw in the fabric of our reality, the moment that transformed my dread into a full-blown investigation came on a Sunday afternoon. Liam was at the piano, working his way through a book of classical music. He began to play Mendelssohn's Wedding March, its triumphant notes filling our modern, open-plan home. Clara walked into the room, holding her favorite doll. She heard the music and she froze. Her face, which had been bright and happy, crumpled. A deep, gut-wrenching sob tore from her small body, a sound of pure, undiluted heartbreak. That's the music. She cried, tears streaming down her face. They played it for so long, and he never came. It was the missing piece of the blueprint. The sad whispers in the car, the heavy white dress, the waiting people, and now the music. It was a wedding. A wedding that went terribly wrong. Not my questions for her became more focused. Clara, the man who never came, I asked gently one evening, do you remember his name? She was quiet for a long time, staring at the ceiling above her bed. Then she whispered a name that sounded like a half-forgotten secret. Arthur. I now had a place, St. Giles Cathedral. An event, a wedding, and a name, Arthur. My search began at the church itself. I made an appointment with the parish priest, pretending I was researching the cathedral's architectural history. I asked if I could see the old parish records, the marriage registries from past decades. He was polite, but firm. Those records were private, containing sensitive family information. Many of the older books, he said, were incomplete or had been lost to time. It was a dead end. Defeated, I turned to the town library's newspaper archives, the repository of our public memory. The task felt impossible. I was looking for a ghost, a failed wedding from an unknown year, with only a first name to guide me. I decided to focus on the eras when the name Arthur was most popular, the 1920s, the 30s, the 40s. I spent weeks of my spare time in the dim light of the microfilm reader, my eyes aching, scrolling through endless announcements of happy couples. Found them in a June edition from 1948. The announcement took up half a page in the society section, filled with the flowery language of the time. It was for the wedding of two of the town's most prominent families. The groom, Mr. Arthur Albright. The bride-to-be, Miss Eleanora Vance. The article praised the match, detailed the bride's dress, a custom gown of white satin with seed pearl, embroidery on the sleeves, and announced that the grand ceremony was to be held at St. Giles Cathedral on the last Saturday of June. I felt a shock of recognition. The little seed pearls on the sleeves. My daughter had described a dress. She had no possible way of knowing. My hands trembling, I scrolled forward through the newspapers, moving past the date the wedding was supposed to have taken place. I searched the society pages for a photograph of the happy couple on the church steps. There was nothing. The wedding had been erased from the public record. A week later, I found it. It wasn't a proud announcement on the front page, but a small, discreet notice buried deep in the paper. A masterpiece of social damage control. It stated simply that the wedding between Mr. Albright and Miss Vance did not take place. Then, in the very next paragraph, it announced the sudden elopement of Mr. Arthur Albright to another woman, Eleanora Vance's own cousin, a young woman, who had been slated to be one of her bridesmaids. The betrayal was so stunning, so complete, it took my breath away. This was the story. This was the source of the 70-year-old heartbreak residing in my daughter. I kept searching, needing to know what became of her. I found Eleanora Vance's obituary from 1957, not even a decade later. She had died at the age of 29. The cause of death was listed as complications from influenza, but the obituary noted that she had never married and had lived a quiet and secluded life following a period of ill health. That began in the summer of 1948. Her illness wasn't influenza. It was a broken heart, a public humiliation so profound it had stolen her future, her joy, and ultimately her life. This is where everything ended for me. It wasn't an exaggeration. Her life, for all intents and purposes, had ended on the Yasalai steps of that church, waiting for a man who was never coming. How do you explain this to a child? How do you explain it to yourself? I am an architect who builds new things. I don't know how to repair a ruin that exists only in my daughter's soul. The beautiful cathedral that Liam loved for its music, and I admired for its design, became a chilling monument to one woman's immense sorrow. I could no longer see the stained glass windows without imagining Eleonora's face behind them. Waiting. We continued to drive past the church. Clara's reaction was always the same. The sad silence, the whispered finality. The story was now known to me, but that didn't stop her from telling it. Then, one Saturday, I did something different. As we approached St. Giles, I pulled the car over. I turned off the engine. Liam looked at me, his eyes questioning but trusting. "Come on, sweetie," I said to Clara, opening her door. She resisted, her body stiff with a fear that was not her own. "No, Mommy, I don't want to." "I know," I said softly, "but we have to." I took her small, cold hand in mine. Together, The three of us walked up the massive stone steps, the same steps Eleonora must have walked up in her heavy white dress. We stopped right in front of the enormous oak doors. I knelt down so I was looking directly into my daughter's deep, sad eyes. "Listen to me, Clara," I said, my voice full of a conviction I didn't know I had. "That was a long time ago. He wasn't good enough for you. He wasn't worth a single one of your tears. You are strong, and you are beautiful, and you are so, so loved." She stared at the heavy doors for a long moment. Then she looked at me, at Liam, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was an acknowledgement, an acceptance, a letting go. We haven't spoken of Arthur or Eleonora since. We still drive past the church, but Clara no longer says the words. The silence is no longer heavy with sorrow. It's just a quiet moment of passage. It's as if by standing on the spot of her greatest pain and being surrounded by a love that was real and true, the ghost inside her was finally set free. But I know a part of Eleonora Vance, the heartbroken bride, will always be a part of the foundation of my daughter's soul. I build structures meant to withstand time. But what I learned from my daughter is that heartbreak and betrayal are structures too, and they can last longer than stone. I look at Clara now, so full of laughter and light, and I pray with an architect's desperate hope that the life we are building for her is strong enough to keep the ghosts at bay, a life where, this time, she finally gets to have her happy ending.